Chapter 2, Section 4. The Rise of New Empires. The rise of new empires. After 700 BC, new empires arose in Western Asia that covered vast stretches of the ancient world. The Assyrians were better at conquest than at ruling, and their empire lasted less than 100 years. The Persian Empire brought many years of peace to Southwest Asia, increasing trade and the general well-being of its people. The Assyrian Empire. The first of the new empires was formed in Assyria, located on the upper Tigris River. The Assyrians were a Semitic-speaking people who exploited the use of iron weapons to establish an empire by 700 BC. The Assyrian Empire included Mesopotamia, parts of the plateau of Iran, sections of Asia Minor, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt down to Thebes. In less than 100 years, however, internal strife and resentment of Assyrian rule began to tear the Assyrian Empire apart. In 612 BC, the empire fell to a coalition of Chaldeans and Medes, people who lived in the east, and it was divided between those powers. At its height, the Assyrian Empire was ruled by kings whose power was seen as absolute. Under their leadership, the Assyrian Empire became well organized. Local officials were directly responsible to the king. The Assyrians also developed an efficient system of communication to administer their empire. A network of posts was established throughout the empire that used relays of horses to carry messages. The system was so effective that a governor anywhere in the empire could send a question and receive an answer from the king within a week. One of the last Assyrian kings, Ashurbanipal, established one of the world's first libraries at Nineveh. This library has provided abundant information concerning ancient Southwest Asian civilizations. The Assyrians were good at conquering others. Through many years of practice, they developed effective military leaders and fighters. The Assyrian army was large, well-organized, and disciplined. A force of infantrymen was its core, joined by cavalrymen and horse-drawn war chariots that were used as platforms for shooting arrows. Moreover, the Assyrians had the first large armies equipped with iron weapons. Another factor in the army's success was its ability to use different military tactics. The Assyrians could wage guerrilla warfare in the mountains, set battles on open ground, and lay siege to cities. They used battering rams and siege towers to hammer at the city's walls. Then they would tunnel under them, making them collapse. The Assyrians used terror as an instrument of warfare. They regularly laid waste to the land in which they were fighting. They smashed dams, looted and destroyed towns, set crops on fire, and cut down trees, particularly fruit trees. The Assyrians were especially known for committing atrocities on their captives. King Ashurbanipal recorded this account of his treatment of prisoners. Primary source: 3,000 of their combat troops I felled with weapons. Many I took alive. From some of these I cut off their hands to the wrist. From others I cut off their noses, ears, and fingers. I put out the eyes of many of the soldiers. I burned their young men and women to death. H.W.F. Saggs, The Might That Was Assyria. The Persian Empire. After the collapse of the Assyrian Empire, the Chaldean king, Nebuchadnezzar II, made Babylonia the leading state in Western Asia. He rebuilt Babylon as the center of his empire and gave it a reputation as one of the great cities of the ancient world. But Babylon fell to the Persians in 539 BC. The rise of the Persian Empire. The Persians were Indo-Europeans who lived in what is today southwestern Iran. Primarily nomadic, the Persians were eventually unified by one family. One member of this family, Cyrus, created a powerful Persian state that stretched from Asia Minor to India. Cyrus ruled from 559 BC to 530 BC. In 539 BC, he captured Babylon. His treatment of Babylonia showed remarkable restraint and wisdom. He also allowed the Jews, who had been held there as captives, to return to Israel. The people of his time called Cyrus the Great. He demonstrated wisdom and compassion in the conquest and organization of his empire. Unlike the Assyrian rulers, Cyrus had a reputation for mercy. Medes, Babylonians, and Jews all accepted him as their ruler. Cyrus had a genuine respect for other civilizations. For example, he used Assyrian, Babylonian, and Egyptian designs for building his palaces. Cyrus's successors sought to extend the territory of the Persian Empire. His son, Cambyses, successfully invaded Egypt. Darius, who ruled from 521 BC to 486 BC, added a new Persian province in western India. He then conquered Thrace in Europe, creating the world's largest empire to that time. Contact with Greece led Darius to invade the Greek mainland. Darius strengthened the Persian government. He divided the empire into 20 provinces called satrapies. A governor, or satrap, literally a protector of the kingdom, ruled each province. Each satrap collected taxes, provided justice, and recruited soldiers. An efficient communication system sustained the Persian Empire. Officials easily traveled through the empire on well-maintained roads, dotted with way stations that provided food, shelter, and fresh horses. The royal road stretched from Lydia to Susa, the empire's chief capital. In this system, the Persian king, the great king, held an exalted position. He had the power of life and death. Much of the empire's power depended on the military. By the time of Darius, Persian kings had created a standing army of professional soldiers from all over the empire. At its core were a cavalry force and an elite infantry force. They were known as the Immortals because whenever a member was killed, he was immediately replaced. The fall of the Persian Empire. After Darius, the Persian kings became isolated at their courts, surrounded by luxuries. As the kings increased taxes, loyalty to the empire declined. Struggles over the throne weakened the monarchy, rule by a king or queen. Persian kings had many wives and children. The sons had little real power, and many engaged in plots to gain the throne. This bloody struggle for the throne weakened the empire and led to its conquest by the Greek ruler Alexander the Great during the 330s BC. Persian religion. Zoroastrianism, the Persians' religion, was their most original cultural contribution. According to tradition, Zoroaster, revered as a prophet of the true religion, was born in 660 BC. His teachings were recorded in the Zend Avesta, the sacred book of Zoroastrianism. Like the Jews, Zoroastrians were monotheistic. To Zoroaster, Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, was the supreme God who created all things. Ahura Mazda was supreme, but he was not unopposed. At the beginning of the world, the evil spirit Ahriman opposed him. Humans played a role in the struggle between good and evil. Ahura Mazda gave humans the freedom to choose between right and wrong. The good person chooses the way of Ahura Mazda, who would eventually triumph.